welcome to Addicted to Murder. This is Courtney, licensed professional counselor with over a decade of experience.
And this is Trisha, and my biggin is full of coffee grounds when I camp.
Your biggin?
My biggin.
Is that a weird coffee maker?
It's the mesh basket in a coffee percolator.
Oh.
Have you ever used a percolator?
Yeah.
Okay. I prefer it when I go camping, like over the French press.
Right.
I think it's fun to watch the coffee perkle. So
I think percolate is the word for that.
Yeah, it's percolating. It's going along. And you can see like it pop up. I don't know why. It's the little things.
But, I mean, you have to enjoy the little things.
When we were, okay, someone's leaving. Starting this podcast, and I was looking up the word. It made me want coffee, and so I made some coffee. It's salted caramel grounds.
Oh,
it's
nice. I have an iced caramel mocha over here. I did not make it. I picked it up at a place.
It's a blustery, nearly winter's day. We're still technically...
It's very fall.
But it feels cold as shit, and it's been raining.
It's windy.
My rain barrel, because I have one of those, and Chris was making fun of me last night because I was like, I wonder if the rain barrel's filling. And he's like, you sound so old. But it's like, I mean, a quarter of the way full just from this weekend.
Nice.
So I'm not good at volume versus ratio versus blah, blah, blah. But it's a lot.
It is a lot.
We got a lot of rain this weekend.
It has been a lot. My dog has been going nuts and is so sad.
Because she can't go outside and play?
Yes. And she does not like being wet, so she does not go out and play even by herself when it's raining.
My cats are being little bitches because... Oh, Chris forgot his phone. That's what that noise is. Hold on a second. Though we kicked the boys out, their devices are still going off.
Right. They're not very organized
in
their departure.
Anyways, my cats, when it's raining like this, they go outside to go potty. They're inside-outside cats, but I hate litter boxes. And they will just go, like, basically, like, put their butts off the deck, like, hang their butts off the deck. So they just, like, go potty there, and it's gross because then Chris has to pick it up. But
I mean, at least Chris has to pick it up, not you.
Oh, he picks it up and he does things. But, you know, it's too wet for them to, like, bury it. Like, they're just not hanging there right now. So,
yes.
Anyways, enough of that.
Yes. We have a new case for you today.
We have a new, really fucked up case.
Yes. But first, I have a not so fucked up question.
Yay.
So, since this episode is coming out on Halloween week, we've talked about favorite costumes before, I know. What about, like, what was just, like, the worst costume you ever had? That, like, either you put no effort into or you put a lot of effort and it just did not work the way you wanted it to.
Why don't I think about that while you tell me yours? Because you probably have one in mind.
I think probably my worst one that I actually, like, put some effort into. It was a very last minute, like, am I a teenager? Do I still go trick-or-treating or not kind of phase. And so I literally just took, like, an old hand-me-down prom dress that didn't really fit correctly and, like, put on a plastic tiara and went as, like, a prom queen.
Okay.
But, like, zero effort. Didn't really look good. It was a Washington Halloween. So it was cold and rainy and I had a coat on over it. And
I was a prom queen before, too, but I think I was a dead prom queen. So I went to Goodwill and bought, like, the dress.
Yeah.
And then, you know, makeup. I guess it would be this year's costume because the team I was on at work, we were going to do a 5K.
Right.
And then I got sick, so I couldn't do it. But I had ordered a costume. We were all going to be Inside Out characters, but dead. So we were going to be dead inside. And my costume came late as well, but it just did arrive, and it is 3 sizes too big for me.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I didn't even try it on. I just told Chris, this is what you're wearing for trick-or-treaters this year.
Yeah, because about 3 times your size is about Chris's size.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like, too big to even be, like, a nightshirt because the arms go down this far past my hands.
Wow.
So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just too big. But it's Etsy, so I don't really know if I can send it back. And even so, like, whatever. So that was a real bummer
That it does sound like a bummer.
because I was going to be fear
Right.
because I'm fearful. And he's purple. I think it's a he. I
Yeah,
don't
he.
know. Yeah. And purple's like one of my faves.
Yeah.
So
That's a
probably
bummer.
this year. So now what I have ordered last minute is just an inflatable thing, like a crocodile eating my butt or
Oh.
biting me on the butt, but it's an inflatable crocodile that just goes on. Because I was like, last minute, I don't know, this is what I'm being.
Right.
Mulder is going as Rambo.
Oh.
So I will post those pics when his costume arrives. It's not here yet.
Got it.
But he always has the greatest costumes.
He does. He always like wins by far.
Yeah, he slays, as the kids say.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Well, thanks for that question, Courtney. Yeah, so I really want to preface that this case has got a lot of childhood sex abuse and incest. So don't listen to this if that kind of stuff triggers you, because it was pretty hard to read this book, and it's not a serial killer, but
He's just as bad as one.
he's just an awful, but very interesting upbringing
Right.
because it's different. I'll just get into it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be Josef Fritzl, aka the Monster of Amstetten, and I just looked up how to pronounce that in here. You hear it?
Oh.
Amstetten.
Good job.
So this is an Austrian case, so there will be things I won't be able to pronounce or mispronounce or whatever. So just bear with me. I'm not doing it on purpose. All right, so here we go. And the book that we're using is called Secrets in the Cellar by John Glatt. Pretty much everything I'm getting from this book. So
All
there's
right.
that. Josef Stefan Fritzl was born in Amstetten, Lower Austria, on April 9th, 1935, and this was during the time of the Nazi uprising in neighboring Germany. And around the time that Joseph was 3, the Austrian Nazi Party invited Adolf Hitler, the German chancellor, to occupy Austria. Again, I didn't fact check all this stuff that came out of the book, so if some of the history is wrong, I apologize. But we're just going to go with it. So a year after the occupation by the Nazi Party, Joseph's mom, Maria Fritzl, kicked Joseph's dad out of the house. So allegedly, Joseph's dad was stepping out on Maria, screwing around all over town, and she would eventually divorce him. So Joseph Sr., his dad, was most likely killed fighting for the Nazis in the war a few years later. And so Joseph Jr., who we're speaking about, grew up hating his father, and he thought he was like a low-life loser. However, Joseph idolized his mother. He felt she was perfect and how all women should be. So, Courtney, we always know that leads us to great places.
Yes, lots of mommy issues.
Right. Sorry, took a sip. Joseph, however, was off the mark, thinking his mom was perfect. By all accounts, she was far from it. She was eccentric, which isn't bad, but she was very discipline-oriented. She was very much involved with the Third Reich ideology and very much encouraged her son to join the Hitler Youth movement to turn him into a man, so to speak. So, Courtney, do you mind, I'm putting you on the spot, reading this little blurb I pulled out of Wikipedia on Hitler Youth? Because I didn't know very much about it. I'd heard of it, but I didn't know what it was. So, for our listeners that don't know.
Yeah, so the members of the Hitler Youth were viewed as ensuring the future of Nazi Germany, and they were indoctrinated in Nazi ideology, including racism. The boys were indoctrinated with the myths of Aryan racial superiority and to view Jews and Slavs as subhumans. Members were taught to associate state-identified enemies, such as Jews, with Germany's previous defeat in the First World War and societal decline. The Hitler Youth were used to break up church youth groups, spy on religious classes and Bible studies, and interfere with church attendance. Education and training programs for the Hitler Youth were designed to undermine the values of traditional structures of German society. Their training also aimed to remove social and intellectual distinctions between classes, to be replaced and dominated by the political goals of Hitler's totalitarian dictatorship. Sacrifice for the Nazi cause was instilled into their training. As historian Richard Evans observes, quote, "The songs they sang were Nazi songs, the books they read were Nazi books." Former Hitler Youth Franz Jagerman said that the notion "Germany must live, even if the members of the Hitler Youth had to die," was hammered into them.
So that was taken out of Wikipedia. So again, grain of salt. But we can kind of see what the Hitler Youth was, and his mom wanted him to be involved in it.
Right, and he was from a young age.
Yeah. So there's that. So Courtney, based on this childhood so far, what are you thinking? I mean, it's very different from the killers we've covered in the past.
Yeah, there's definitely, something uniquely formative about growing up during a war, like wartime. Fear and destruction and death was all around, and those things were really normalized, for a young child. That's just the life that he knew. And then adding in the propaganda and the upbringing in the Hitler Youth, Joseph was literally indoctrinated to hate others, to accept and value violence and brutality, and to blindly respect and follow authority orders. So kind of these neural connections starting at such a young age will only strengthen as he gets older, as we'll see.
It was like the groundwork was laid.
Yes.
And it just got stronger and stronger. Joseph was beat up all the time by his mother when he was a kid. He would later say that she waited years to treat a UTI that he had as a child. So it was a very painful UTI. And he made it, the way I read it was that, she was doing it to be mean. She waited to treat it. His future sister-in-law said this, quote, "He grew up without a father, and his mother raised him with her fist, beating him until he was black and blue almost every day." So Joseph himself described this later. Quote, "She used to beat me, hit me until I was lying in a pool of blood on the floor. It left me feeling totally humiliated and weak. I never had a kiss from her. She kept insulting me and told me I was Satan, a criminal, a no good. The only thing she ever did with me was go to the church." What are you thinking, Courtney?
So Joseph idolized his mother, and had been taught through kind of the Hitler Youth that those in control are always right, and that violence was normal and necessary. So, therefore in his mind, right, with this, like, love became intertwined with humiliation and pain, because that's the experience he had with his mother. He loved her so much. She was perfect to him, and yet she was also incredibly cruel and violent.
Right. So where and when they lived made being divorced very hard. It was scandalous in the Catholic community that they participated in, and the Fritzls were very poor. They had to rely on charity just to not starve. By the time he was 6 in 1941, little Joseph was used to seeing Nazis patrolling his neighborhood. This Nazi exposure would impress upon Joseph respect for control and authority over others. When Joseph started school, he was found to be very intelligent by his teachers, and he didn't cause any trouble, and he actually had lots of friends. During this time of the war, he and his mother would spend many nights in a shelter because there were bombings everywhere, as Amstetten was a strategic city for the Allied forces. It was speculated that during this time, Joseph's mother molested Joseph. So the book we're using says this, quote, "Perhaps he had felt trapped and disempowered, as his controlling mother crossed the boundaries into incest. Whatever happened between them sexually would scar the little boy for life, with disastrous results." Courtney, anything you'd like to discuss, supposing that this sex abuse did occur?
So if Joseph was sexually abused by his mother, this would have added onto the confusing connections about love that he already had. So he loved and idolized his mother and thought that she could do no wrong. So he likely didn't recognize, or if he did recognize, he didn't accept that the sexual behaviors between mother and son were not okay. It normalized incest for him. And then, add in the consistent physical abuse. They were likely connections being built between love, violence, sex, and control.
Yeah, we can see where this is
going.
So, sorry, you guys, I've had a cold for a long time. Right near their apartment, there was a place called the Mauer Clinic, which was apparently part of the I even wrote this out. Mauthausen German concentration camp network. It was at this clinic where they euthanized hundreds of people. 800 or so were forced to work on the railroads in this area before being transferred to concentration camps for execution. There's some very dark, very evil history during this time in Amstetten. It was alleged that in 1944, there was a deranged Nazi psychiatrist named Dr. Emil Gelny that came to the clinic for his own entertainment. And he chose, quote, 39 unnecessary mouths, and killed them with a variety of drugs. He also liked to electrocute people as well. So, like, we could keep talking about this awful stuff that was happening all around Joseph, because this was the height of the Nazi atrocities. But we'll just say this much for here, unless you have something you want to say. But Joseph was fascinated by all of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how weird must it have been to be a child growing up in like Nazi-run territory where dehumanization, torture, and mass murder of an entire race of people was painted as normal. And, you know, humans, especially children, we're naturally curious and have a fascination with death and the macabre. I mean, like, think our history of like public executions and, you know, the obsession with true crime. Like,
Right.
It's part of kind of all of us in humans to want to understand the things we don't understand.
Right. Well, by 1945, U.S. troops had liberated this part of Austria. But that didn't mean it got easier for those in the town, because for the next 10 years, Soviet Russia occupied this part of Austria. So basically, this kid lived through a Nazi occupation, a war, then a communist takeover. He would have witnessed so many horrible atrocities. And during this time, I read that it was notoriously harmful to the women in this place because they were being raped like in the open. The whole place was full of undetonated bombs, and it was pretty war-torn by the time Joseph was a teenager. The book said that the kids would still be kids, and they were running around playing soccer in these, you know, rubble-strewn streets and, you know, bombed-out parts of town. Joseph would claim that his childhood was spent primarily escaping in books. His confidence in himself started to increase as he realized that he was actually pretty smart and he could accomplish many things. Things got a little better at home as his mom finally got a job, so they had an income. So he still worshipped his mother and thought of her as the best woman in the world. He felt that the beatings she gave him were for his own good and protection. Joseph never admitted to having an incestual relationship with his mother. However, he would confess that he had sexual fantasies about her. Joseph graduated from school around age 16, and I think that was typical. And he went into a Polytech program for electrical engineering. He did great in the program, and he got a job in a town called Linz, which is about 40 miles from Amstetten. He took his mother with him. Joseph became known as a brilliant engineer, and he worked very hard at his job. As he continued to mature, he got a reputation for being a, quote, dandy. He liked to wear smart clothing, and he had his mustache just so. He enjoyed going to the bars, and the ladies seemed to love him. He didn't go out with the girls much, however, because he was afraid his mom would disapprove. Courtney, any thoughts on the man he's growing into?
You know, on the one hand, Joseph is utilizing his natural abilities and is, you know, building self-confidence and esteem through education and employment, right? However, bringing his mother with him when he moved and deferring to her approval speaks to some significant enmeshment between the two of them that I imagine likely interfered with other relationships quite a bit.
Right. Because she had a job, so I'm assuming she could have stayed where she was.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, though. Well, of course, it couldn't stay good forever, or else we wouldn't be sharing this case. He started to pull a Randy Woodfield around town. For our listeners out there, do you remember what Randy did? Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Okay. Well, he was a serial exposure of women. To women, sorry. So he would, like, you know, whip it out in public all the time, like, to the point where he got kicked off the Green Bay Packers practice squad. And it looks like Joseph started to do this as well. He would hide out in wooded areas in Linz and wait for women to walk by, and then he'd expose himself to them. And he also started to peep in on women, spying on them. Courtney, can you tell us a little bit about this paraphilia? It's a weird one.
So exhibitionistic disorder, right, is what it's called, is when a person is sexually aroused by exposing their genitals to others typically to unsuspecting strangers. It mostly occurs in men, starts during kind of this early 20s time, and is very frequently comorbid with voyeurism, which is the sexual arousal from watching others engage in sexual behavior. So it's very common for men who like to expose themselves to also enjoy peeping in women's windows.
Well, that sounds like he's pretty stereotypical then.
He is, yes.
His activities did not go unnoticed by the police. They were watching him after a while. By the time he was 21, he moved back to Amstetten, and he found a lady, a 17-year-old Rosemarie, and they got engaged. Rosemarie was very different than Joseph. She had barely any education, and because he felt she was nowhere near as smart as him, Joseph figured he could get away with pretty much whatever he wanted. He figured she would be a submissive partner, which is what he needed. They were married in 1958. They had their first child, Ulrich. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've seen that name before. But anyway, this would be the first of 7 children. Joseph wanted a large family. He felt that a big family would mean more power. Joseph left the child rearing to Rosemarie. All he really did for them was discipline them with his fists. Rosemarie's family despised Joseph. They saw how violent he could be with her and his children. So Joseph's first arrest happened a year later back in Linz. So a woman alleged he had exposed himself to her. He was charged a second time for exhibitionism and again for attempted rape. So we can see him escalating. Rosemarie did not seem bothered by his arrests. She was too busy having and taking care of the kids, possibly. Joseph admits later to being a philanderer. He allegedly went to Ghana for work for a few years and had many affairs while he was there. By 1963, he was back in Amstetten, still growing his family. In 1966, Rosemarie gave birth to Elizabeth, their 4th child, a beautiful little girl, and from the beginning, Joseph felt an attraction to this particular child. So apparently her looks reminded him of his mother, and he was obsessed with Elizabeth while she grew up, and he would eventually lust after Elizabeth. By 1967, Joseph's sex drive was out of control. He would spend hours hiding in bushes to spy on women. He was not very incognito about it either, and many complaints were made regarding his actions. And in September of that year, he escalated. He tried to drag a woman into the woods to rape her. Luckily, she fought him off and she ran away. But several weeks later, he tried again and allegedly raped a young woman. This victim was possibly too embarrassed or something to go to the police because she did not come forward for 40 years. Courtney, let's talk about a few things. First, his feelings towards his daughter, then also his escalation from voyeurism to rape, and lastly about his sexual assault survivors and why do they not always tell?
Right. So firstly, Joseph's attraction to his daughter Elizabeth, while disturbing, is not necessarily surprising. Joseph's first sexual fantasies and experiences were incestual in nature with his mother. And so we know that there's kind of a sexual interest in incest in general, and Joseph would target his child from the opposite sex. And also, it was described that Elizabeth looked like his mother, which would just enhance that connection. So it was almost kind of like fulfilling that fantasy of having sex with his mother again. So there's that. Second, we have seen repeatedly that sexual offenders tend to escalate over time, requiring more risk or stimulation to maintain the rewarding feelings. We saw this same pattern when we discussed Randy Woodfield and Russell Wilson in particular. You know, flashing and peeping on women was no longer producing the same level of arousal or gratification, so Joseph needed to up the ante to get that same result. And then finally, there are many reasons that victims of sexual assault don't come forward. You know, shame can be a very powerful emotion that keeps people quiet, especially if we consider that these first rapes occurred in the 1960s. Police were often non-believing or blamed the victims for their own assaults, and society still held a strong stigma about rape victims as being kind of damaged goods around that time.
So I just had to Google Russell Wilson because all I could think of was the quarterback. And I was like, that's not right. Because I forgot, but he was the colonel.
The colonel, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. it is so sad about. Currently, I'm doing a big paper on what makes victims credible in the eyes of the jury. And I just keep reading about rape victims and how they're blamed a lot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it makes me so mad.
Yes.
This is not fair.
It's not fair.
All right. Anyways, I digress. A month after this rape, Joseph actually broke into a house after midnight and took a knife out of a kitchen drawer. He then raped a young, newly married woman in her bed at knife point. Thankfully, he was arrested for that crime 3 weeks later, and under interrogation, he confessed to the rape. Here's the official police report. On October 24th, 1967, the engineer Josef Fritzl, 32, was questioned and arrested after he managed to enter the bedroom of a flat on the raised ground floor belonging to a 24-year-old married nurse on the night of October 6th, 1967, threatening her with a knife and raping her. Already on September 4th, 1967, in Linz, Ebels, he tried to drag a passing-by 21-year-old woman in the woods and rape her. Excuse me. The papers got wind of the arrest, and the headline read, quote, "Father of 4 exposed by police as a vulgar sex offender. Came through the window, threatened woman with death." So that's like a loose translation from German that the book gave, but they also gave the German-sounding words, but I can't pronounce that, so.
Fair.
Anyways, his arrest led him to being fired, but he only got 18 months for these crimes.
Yep.
Yeah. Courtney?
I mean, clearly, Joseph is continuing to evolve as a sexual predator, moving from a public place to a private home where he could be more in control of the victim and the environment. And as for the sentence, of course it's too low. Sentences for sexual abuse today are not long enough. And this was back in the 1960s when people cared even less about women.
Yeah, I guess in a way it was good that she got anything.
Right.
During his incarceration, Rosemary stood by her husband, even though her family begged her to leave. Courtney, what do you think is going on with Rosemary?
So Rosemary, I think, is just in a classic abuse and control relationship with Joseph. After so long with him, she was likely physically and emotionally beaten down enough to believe that she was worthless and deserved the abuse or didn't deserve better than him. Also, she was a young woman with at least 4 children at this point to take care of. She was 17 when they got together, didn't have experience with working a job or living independently, and I imagine that she was financially dependent on Joseph as well, who made good money.
Sounds like sort of a typical DV
Yep,
situation.
Exactly. Can't leave, can't afford to leave, doesn't have the resources to leave, and doesn't feel like they deserve to leave.
Joseph was released in 1969, and he had no trouble getting a job. His new company seemed to look the other way at his criminal past because he was so brilliant, but his new coworkers, especially the females, were not so excited to work beside a known sexual predator. Regardless, he climbed the company ladder and was promoted to technical director. And that's where we're going to wrap up today.
Yes.
Any other thoughts?
Just, how true is it that white men can get away with anything?
Men, yeah. I mean,
there's a lot more we could say on that, but we won't.
We're not jaded women or anything.
No, not at all.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we got, and stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.